What happens when your fear becomes the loudest voice in the room? And it's wrong? An airport hums like a sleeping giant. Vents whisper cold air. Wheels of carry-ons tick against polished tile. Somewhere a child laughs. Somewhere else a boarding printer coughs out paper like a tired typewriter. It's morning, but the lights are dayless, neon steady, unblinking. This is a place where everybody is going somewhere and trying not to be seen, until someone decides to be seen for all the wrong reasons. She is mid-40s, pearl earrings, phone held like a badge. The kind of person who believes a line is straighter when she's at the front of it. She scans the lounge with trained suspicion, eyes landing on a young black woman in a navy blazer, hair in a neat bun, a thin gold chain at her throat. The girl sips coffee, reading a laminated procedure card not sold in gift shops. The woman stares. The girl doesn't look back. What if she doesn't belong here? The woman's thoughts grit. It's not spoken yet, but it's forming, like a thundercloud stitched together from small, dark pieces. She has a way of carrying doubt like a clutch purse always within reach. Maybe it's the uniform. No wings pinned yet, jacket unzipped. Maybe it's the stillness. Calm people unsettle her when she has none. Or maybe it's the oldest reason, the one people dress up, in other words. A barista calls a name no one claims. Overhead, a chime, then silence. The woman steps closer, fingers tightening around her phone. "Excuse me," she says too brightly. "This area is for premium members." The girl looks up and her voice is soft. "I know. You know." The woman lets the words rust on her tongue. "Do you mind showing your pass?" There is a beat, no longer than a breath, but in that beat the room leans. The girl lifts her lanyard with a slow, practiced motion and sets it gently on the table. The plastic sleeve glints under hard light. The name is there. The airline logo. A title the woman doesn't read. "Security," the woman whispers to her phone, thumb hovering. Yes, there's someone here who's making people uncomfortable. People. A clear plastic phrase. It always sounds cleaner than me. Across the lounge, a teenage boy sees the scene and looks down, cheeks tightening. A man in a suit straightens his tie. Two flight attendants pause at the coffee carafe. The girl's eyes shift from the woman's face to the phone, then back. The look isn't frightened. "It's measured." "Like someone estimating distance at 10,000 feet, ma'am," the girl says evenly. "I'm exactly where I need to be." "Then it won't be a problem to wait until security arrives," the woman replies, summoning the confidence of someone who's never waited for anything but better service. A guard approaches. You can hear him before you see him, the soft squeak of his shoes, the little sad jingle of keys. He stands with the posture of someone who's been called into too many private storms. "What seems to be the issue?" he asks, voice low. The woman gestures with her chin as if pointing at clutter to be cleared. "She won't show a pass." "I don't think she belongs in the lounge." The guard turns. He meets the girl's gaze. There's a flicker, recognition, then respect, but it's gone before it can be named. "Miss, may I see your—" "Of course," she says, reaching into the inside pocket of that navy blazer. Not rushed, not rattled. She places her ID beside the coffee cup like a final chess piece. The guard reads, blinks, looks again. The woman leans in, hungry for confirmation. "Well?" she asks. And that's when the sound comes. Not from the guard. Not from the girl. From overhead, a bright, neutral chime like a gloved tap of a conductor's baton. The lounge freezes, breath at half-mast. "Good morning, passengers," the PA voice says, clinical warm. "This is a pre-boarding announcement for Flight 278 to Crescent City. Your flight crew has arrived. Please be advised, Captain A. Monroe will be making a brief address at the gate." The girl closes the procedure card with a neat snap. The woman's mouth opens, a hinge coming loose. The young black woman stands. She picks up her lanyard, slides the badge back into her blazer, and with one smooth motion that suggests hours in simulators and years of being underestimated, she looks at the guard, then at the woman. "Excuse me," she says, voice like clean air. "I have a flight to fly." The room tilts, a spotlight without a stage. Coffee spoons pause mid-stir. Somewhere, that printer coughs again like it heard a joke it can't repeat. The girl turns, steps past the lines the woman thought she owned, and heads toward gate B12, toward the glass that faces the runway, toward the announcement that just said her name, and suddenly everyone else is following. Morning at gate B12 is a study in organized drift. Clusters of travelers hover like migrating birds around metal charging totems. Screens glow with blues and ambers that never change, and beyond the glass the runway flashes with taxiway lights. A jeweled necklace laid across concrete, You can taste recycled air and burnt espresso. You can hear the thin beep of a wheelchair backing up and the rubber hush of suitcase wheels. Everything moves without seeming to. Ava Monroe walks into this current like someone who knows where the hidden eddies are. The navy blazer fits her like a vow. The white shirt is crisp enough to cut glare. The stripes on her shoulders are subtle lightning. She moves with the narrow economy of cockpit choreography, fingertips grazing the flight deck keys in her pocket, eyes mapping exits and faces and light sources without ever appearing to stare. When she smiles at the gate agent, it's quick and real. The way professionals smile at other professionals who've earned it before 9 a.m. "Captain Monroe," the agent says, posture straightening, voice softening a shade. "Welcome." "Morning," Ava answers. Her voice has instrument panel calm. "How's our bird?" "Fueling now. Maintenance signed off on the nose gear. Weather cleared along the coastal corridor. Smooth ride expected." Ava nods, the information sliding into that interior grid only she sees. She glances past the counter to the windows. The aircraft is there, a long-bodied promise painted in anonymous livery, its nose facing the horizon like a question that already knows its answer. A tug idles. A marshaller rolls his wrists in lazy circles, footsteps behind her, sharp, impatient. Elaine Whitford arrives at the same gate like a storm front in pearls. The red of her lipstick has been reapplied to perfection. The line of her jaw is set like a boundary marker. She carries a handbag with sharp corners and walks with the claim of someone used to open doors and empty spaces. She does not look at the airplane. She looks for allies. "Excuse me," she tells the man in the suit from the lounge as if they're members of the same invisible club. "Is this B-12 to Crescent City?" He checks the monitor, nods without warmth. "Boarding soon." Elaine's eyes slide to the gate desk. They land on Ava's shoulders, then freeze when her gaze reaches the captain's bars. There's a quiet recalibration behind her pupils. That small, reluctant computation that confirms something she wants to unknow. A child with a dinosaur backpack leans on the glass, fogging it with breath. "Look," he says to his mom, pointing at the jet's blinking wingtip. "It's winking." Ava stoops to the boy's height for a moment, the stripes on her epaulets catching the fluorescent light. "It is," she says softly. "That tells everyone where the wing is in the dark. So we don't bump into what we can't see." The boy nods, solemn. "Do you fly it?" "I do," Ava answers. His mother smiles, relieved by the humanity in a place designed for procedure. "Safe flight, Captain." Ava nods again and steps back into her lane, that practiced corridor of purpose between chaos and courtesy. She checks the weather radar on her tablet, flicks through NOTAMs, signs off on the final printout the agent offers. Her pen makes a clean final line. Elaine edges closer to the desk, voice honeyed and cool. "I'd like to know if the captain would be willing to make a brief announcement. My husband is waiting to pick me up. Any arrival update would be appreciated." The agent gestures toward Ava. "You can ask her directly." Directly is the one thing Elaine never does if she can help it. But she turns, schooling her tone into civil. "Captain Monroe, is it?" Ava looks up from the tablet. "Yes, ma'am." Elaine's smile is as thin as a business card. "I must say I prefer when pilots make themselves visible. Inspires confidence to see who's in charge." Ava's expression doesn't move much, only the smallest softening at the edges. "You'll see me again before takeoff," she replies. "I always brief my cabin and greet the gate." A sound without agreement. "Just so long as we have a steady hand today." The words float there, wrapped in silk, weighted with lead. The nearby teenage boy from the lounge hears them and looks away, jaw flexing. A flight attendant, Maya, hair in a tidy twist, steps up beside Ava with a stack of safety cards and a knowing glance that says she heard everything and will say nothing. Ava's eyes move to the windows again. A gust rolls across the tarmac, flipping a stray catering wrapper into a brief ballet. A jet engine spools in the distance, a low, patient growl. She inhales. "The airport smells like metal and morning, familiar, neutral, hers. Pre-flight?" Maya asks quietly. "Let's do it," Ava says. The words are simple, but they carry weight like a door closing gently on a noisy hallway. Elaine watches them walk down the jet bridge. Two silhouettes framed by a rectangle of bright industrial light. And something unspoken stirs, not quite curiosity, not quite dread. She smooths her blouse, turns away, and arranges her face into the shape she prefers. A look that suggests the world usually agrees with her. Not today. The airplane seems to blink, wingtip steady, patient as a metronome. Boarding begins with that familiar chime, the PA voice smoothing the edges of impatience. We'll be boarding by groups today, starting with families, military, and our first-class cabin. Lines congeal from clusters. People become letters and numbers. Ava returns to the podium, flanked by Maya and the gate agent. She checks the manifest notepad tucked beside the mic. She doesn't have to speak yet, but her presence steadies the air. Passengers notice. A few nod. One whispers, "That's her." Elaine steps forward before her group is called, chin anchored at an angle that expects the world to tilt with it. "I'm on a tight schedule," she tells the gate agent. "You can wave me through." The scanner chirps a sharp, unhelpful red. The agent's smile holds. "We're still on pre-boarding, ma'am." "You're Group 2. I'm a premium card holder." "Yes, ma'am. Group 2. Elaine feels eyes on her. She doesn't like eyes. "Fine," she says, stepping aside just far enough to still look like she's in charge of the space she's not occupying. Families go first. A mother holding a toddler thanks Ava in passing. A soldier nods. Ava's answers are light, practiced. "Morning. Welcome aboard. Enjoy the view on the left." Small phrases like handrails. When Group 1 is called, Elaine slides forward again. The scanner flashes green this time and prints a receipt she didn't ask for. "Excuse me," she says. Not to the agent now, but to Ava. The word carries a private courtroom. A moment. Ava turns neutral. "Yes, ma'am?" "I'd like reassurance," Elaine says, lowering her voice just enough to raise the stakes. "You'll be at the controls the entire time?" "No trainees?" Maya's eyebrows make a brief, controlled climb. Ava's expression doesn't flicker. "Our flight deck will have 2 pilots, my first officer and me. We adhere to all FAA standard procedures." "Of course," Elaine replies, hearing procedures and choosing problem. "And how many hours do you have?" "In this aircraft type specifically." A few nearby passengers pause, ears shifting. The teenage boy stands with his backpack straps gripped, watching like he's seen this scene before on smaller playgrounds. Ava answers the way she files a flight plan. Clean lines, no drama. "Enough to be your safest option today. And enough to know that hours don't impress turbulence." Maya bites back a smile. Elaine doesn't. "I didn't mean offense," Elaine says, meaning offense. "It's just, people don't expect, competence?" Ava offers gently. Elaine's lips press a colorless line. "Surprises," she corrects. "The captain is usually visible sooner. It helps passengers feel safe. Safety is built long before visibility," Ava replies. "In checklists. In training. In how we treat each other when nobody's watching." Elaine says. "Well, if there's any deviation, I'll be notifying the airline. We all have our standards." "Understood," Ava says without moving anything but her voice. A businessman behind Elaine clears his throat. "Some of us have connections," he mutters, pretending to talk to no one. "Could we board?" Elaine steps forward, realizing she's become the clog. Yes. She gestures toward the jet bridge like a conductor allowing an encore. "Let's not hold up the aircraft." She takes 2 steps, then pivots back. "Captain, one more thing. I prefer a smooth landing. No dramatic flares." Ava's eyes are steady water. "We prefer those too, ma'am." Elaine nods, the kind you give when you think you've made something better by speaking. She moves down the jet bridge, shoes clicking like punctuation. The line resumes. The teenage boy shuffles forward until he's in front of Ava. He doesn't speak at first. Then, "I think it's cool you fly." "Thanks," Ava says, and it sounds like a promise to handle the sky with care. He glances toward the jet bridge where Elaine vanished. "People are weird. Sometimes," Ava agrees. "But we're still going to Crescent City." He grins and disappears. A man with a camera phone loiters near the rope stanchions, aiming his lens without aiming his courage. Maya shifts subtly to block him. "Ma'am," she says to Ava in a voice that could be mistaken for air. "Cabin secure?" "Almost," Ava answers. "I'll brief in 2. The gate clears to a trickle. Latecomers and wanderers with coffees they shouldn't have bought this close to departure. Elaine reappears for a moment at the top of the jet bridge, as if she left something behind and found instead that she wanted one more swing. "Captain," she calls. Too loud for privacy, too soft for purpose. "Your co-pilot? He's experienced?" "He is," Ava says, "and comfortable." "With you at the controls?" Maya inhales, held note. The agent looks down, scrolling nothing. The businessman sighs theatrically. Ava meets Elaine's gaze across the carpet, across the small distances that sometimes feel like oceans. Yes, she says, even. He's comfortable with professionalism. A second of weightless silence follows, like the moment before rotation. Elaine lowers her chin, a nod that isn't a nod. Good, she murmurs, turning away. The scanner chirps at the last passenger. The gate area exhale is almost audible. Ava looks at the window. The wingtip blinks. The tug disconnects. In the thin reflection, she catches her own face and the line of Elaine's shoulders disappearing down the gray throat of the jet bridge. Ava's inner thought arrives quietly, like weather reported, not created. You can't teach the sky your bias. She places the manifest on the podium and lifts the mic to greet the remaining aisle ghosts. Behind her, the teenage boy gives Elaine's vacated space a long, silent stare, like a note held too long in an empty room. The cabin is the shape of a promise, a narrow tube stuffed with expectation. Overhead bins thud, plastic latches click, phones trill with sent emails. A draft of cold air moves down the aisle like a river that forgot its banks. Row numbers beat past. The soundscape is small, seatbelts, zippers, coughs, but the mood is larger than the fuselage can hold. Maya stands at the front galley, a tray of water cups balanced like an offering. The first officer, Reyes, calm eyes, end-of-week stubble, leans from the cockpit, checking the cabin with a pilot's protective glance. Ava works the pre-start checklist, fingers precise, voice low. Battery on. Battery on. Reyes echoes. IRS align. Aligning. Elaine appears in first class like a verdict delivered on heels. She hangs her blazer, decides the hook isn't worthy, folds it on her lap instead. Her eyes scan and snag on the cockpit door. Open for now, a rectangle of instrumentation and permission. She lifts her phone. Snap Maya is there before the second snap. Ma'am, for security reasons, no photos of the flight deck, please. I'm documenting, Elaine replies, chin up. I had an interaction with your captain at the gate. I may need to escalate. Understood, Maya says, voice as level as a spirit. But not of the cockpit. Elaine lowers the phone, but not the temperature. Fine, then I'll document you. A few heads turn. The businessman from the gate pretends not to watch. The teenage boy, now 2 rows back, absolutely watches. Reyes catches Maya's eye, questions contained within a single raised brow. Maya's nod says, I've got it. He disappears, the cockpit door clicking softly shut. Ladies and gentlemen, the PA crackles overhead in Ava's even tone. Good morning and welcome aboard. We'll begin our safety demonstration shortly. Please take your seats so our crew can ensure an on-time departure. Elaine does not sit. She stands suddenly, the way someone stands when they think standing is a credential. Excuse me. Her voice slices across the aisle. I need to speak to a supervisor before pushback. Maya holds the tray like a shield. Ma'am, we're about to close the door. If you'll take your seat, I will not, Elaine says louder. I have concerns about the captain's readiness. I would feel safer with someone else at the controls. Silence opens like a trapdoor. The toddler in 3A stops mid-complaint. A flight attendant down the aisle freezes with a bin half closed. Even the conditioned air seems to hesitate. The businessman snorts. You're kidding. The teenage boy's face goes fire quiet. Ava hears the words through the door that isn't soundproof against intention. She and Reyes exchange a look that catalogs risks and dignity. Cabin? Ava asks. Reyes nods. We wait. You speak or Maya does? I will, Ava says. She unbuckles, stands, and opens the door just enough to place herself in the movie everyone else is now watching. Ma'am, she says to Elaine, tone surgical. I'm Captain Monroe. You asked for a supervisor? I asked for someone responsible, Elaine says, letting the sentence fall like coins. I witnessed unprofessional behavior in the lounge. I felt threatened. By whom? Ava asks genuinely. Elaine gestures. Not at a person, at an idea. By being challenged when I asked to see a pass. It was chaos. Your colleague refused to comply. And now? I'm expected to trust the same person to fly this aircraft. A murmur moves like wind through wheat. The phrase asked to see a pass ripples with its own history. Maya breathes in. Reyes stays still. Ava doesn't move from her half-threshold. Security was called on me in the lounge, she says plainly. I showed my credentials. I am the captain of this flight. If you have a safety concern, I will address it. If you have a preference, I cannot. Elaine's palm opens, offering disbelief. You expect me to feel safe? Ava's eyes soften without yielding. Safety is what I do. Feeling is yours. The line hangs, beautiful, infuriating. A man in 2C claps once before catching himself. A woman in 1D frowns him silent. Captain, Elaine says, shifting to icy civility, I'm asking to deplane and be rebooked with a different crew. You absolutely may deplane, Ava replies, if you choose. But the crew will remain. Elaine's face reddens by degrees. Or perhaps we should all vote, she says, half joking, wholly not. Maya's voice drops a degree colder. We don't vote on pilots, ma'am. The PA chime sounds again, a bell that feels like a boundary. The gate agent appears at the door with a supervisor in tow. Brenda, blazer with silver wings and a spine that's seen storms. Authority arrives with an apology already written and a pen that doesn't shake. What's the concern? Brenda asks, looking first at Elaine, then at Ava, then at the cabin. Elaine inhales triumph, ready to pour. This captain. Brenda lifts a hand just enough to pause a hurricane. We'll speak in the galley, no one moves. Everyone listens. Even the aircraft seems to lean. In the galley's narrow frame, Brenda's voice is measured. Our captain passed all checks. The decision to continue is hers. The decision to leave is yours. If you interfere with boarding or with crew duties again, security will escort you from the aircraft, and you'll be noted for refusal to comply. Elaine opens, closes. I won't be threatened. You are being informed, Brenda replies, calm as paperwork. Elaine glances past Brenda at the cockpit door, as if the door itself has insulted her. Then I want a record. You'll have one, Brenda says. Now take your seat or take the next flight. A beat too long. Elaine turns slow and points at Ava as if pointing might change math. If anything goes wrong up there, anything, I'll own this airline by morning. A low gasp. A rustle. The teenage boy's eyes go moon-wide. Ava steps back toward the cockpit, restraint like a tailored suit. Ma'am, she says, not unkindly, my job is to make sure we all see morning. Elaine sits. The decision is a slam nobody hears but everybody feels. The cabin exhales. Brenda nods to Maya. Close the door. Maya reaches for the handle. That's when Elaine stands again and lunges for the overhead bin, yanking her bag, blocking the aisle, one strap catching, the motion jerking into the space of the toddler in 3A. The toddler wails. The mother flinches. The bag swings. Ma'am, Maya barks, the professional tone gone siren. Hands off now. The aisle becomes a law of physics inviting consequence. Passengers flinch backward. The strap snaps free, that is the trigger. It forces what comes next. Brenda raises a hand, the signal that means push the button you never want to push. Gate, call airport police, she says, voice a gavel. We have an interference with crew duties. Silence arrives before the uniforms do. It fills the aisle like cold water. Even the toddler's cry drops to hiccups like thunder leaving. Elaine keeps one hand on the bag, one on the seat back, chin high. But the room around her has changed temperature. The rules have stepped into view. 2 airport officers appear at the door with that balanced walk, neither hurry nor drag, hands open, palms quiet. Behind them, the gate agent hovers, headset crooked, eyes careful. Brenda's shoulders set. Maya resets the tray on the galley counter as if to keep gravity where it belongs. Ma'am, the senior officer says, voice low enough to be kind, formal enough to be unmistakable. We've been advised there's an interference with crew duties. Let's talk, Elaine begins on impulse. I am not interfering. I am insisting on basic safety. This airline is, ma'am, he repeats, a second, smaller gavel. Hands away from the overhead, please. Her fingers slip from the strap. The bag thuds into the bin. Something in the sound rings like a door closing that won't open again. The cockpit door sighs open a few inches. Not a spectacle, just enough to allow a different gravity into the frame. Ava steps to the threshold, not moving into the aisle, not needing to. The epaulets are not decoration now. They are context. She speaks without the PA and the cabin somehow hears her anyway. Officers, she says, good morning. We have a single passenger refusing to comply with crew instructions. We haven't pushed. The decision is straightforward. Elaine's head snaps. You. The word is all the old storylines she carries, repackaged for travel. You are the problem. I was threatened in the lounge and now I'm being punished for speaking up. Ava looks at her and what returns in that gaze is not anger. It is a ledger. You called security on me for sitting in a chair I've sat in 1,000 times. You asked to see my pass because you felt uncomfortable with not being in charge. In the cabin, you took photos of the flight deck, refused to sit when instructed, and swung a bag in an occupied aisle. None of those actions improve safety. The officer nods, making a discreet note. Captain, do you wish to deplane the passenger? Ava lets the question breathe. She scans the cabin with pilot eyes, landing on the toddler, the teenage boy, the businessman, the 100 small stories waiting. Her voice drops into the weight-bearing register of command. Yes, she says, for refusal to comply and for interfering with crew duties. Elaine laughs, a brittle sound made of corners. You can't, I have a ticket. I am a premium. Brenda steps in, her tone like paper that has already been signed. Ma'am, under federal law, interference with the duties of the flight crew is a prosecutable offense. Under our contract of carriage, we may refuse transport to any passenger who refuses to comply with crew instructions. You will be rebooked. You will not be on this flight. The words aren't loud. They don't need to be. The cabin registers the shift the way the skin registers pressure before pain. Heads tilt. Mouth still. Elaine's certainty reaches for a foothold and finds only glass. You're all protecting each other. Ava doesn't blink. We're protecting everyone. There is nothing theatrical in what happens next. No hands are cuffed. No voices rise. The officers stand at an angle that opens a path. Brenda gestures to the aisle like a maitre d' of consequence. Maya steps back, creating a corridor without friction. Elaine remains where she is for 3 seconds too long. Long enough for pride to organize a last defense, then lifts her bag from the bin calmly, as if calm could rewrite what calm has witnessed. She turns for the door, but Ava's voice stops her, just her name. Not a command, not a reprimand, a recognition that reverses the geometry. Ms. Whitford. Elaine turns. Ava takes 2 steps into the aisle. Not close. Close enough. I want you to hear something because it matters and because it will follow you farther than this gate. The cabin holds, listening with the same attention it will give to the safety demo. I am a line check captain, Ava says. I evaluate other captains. I write the reports that decide who earns this seat. I teach what the word safe means when the engine coughs and the sky forgets to be gentle. I have flown medevac diversions in storms that didn't care who liked who. I have filed ASRS reports on myself because I believe accountability is not something we ask of others first. And today, I am the person you attempted to remove from a lounge because she didn't fit your picture of authority. The facts are simple. The silence is deep. Elaine swallows. The swallow is audible, even to herself. Some part of her, the part that knows the shapes of power, recognizes one standing in front of her that requires no permission from her definitions. The teenage boy sees it too. He doesn't smile. He doesn't gloat. He just watches like someone watching a safe landing in rough air. Ava's voice softens, not kind, not cruel, human. You will make it to Crescent City later. When you do, perhaps you'll consider who you almost took with you into your fear. Elaine's mouth opens but cannot find words that aren't suddenly too small. She closes it. She nods, once a bare acknowledgement of a horizon she didn't know was there. Brenda tips her head to the officers. They turn, forming that quiet path again. Elaine moves along it, each step a recalibration her heels weren't designed for. At the threshold, she pauses, her reflection in the glossy bulkhead catching the stripes on Ava's shoulders like borrowed light. For a breath, the aircraft mirrors a version of her who doesn't make the same choices. The thought is quick and sharp. Then it's gone. The door closes behind her, the seal whispering the word final. The cabin seems to float a half-inch higher on its own. Ava remains in the aisle a moment more. Not to celebrate, to breathe, to make sure her steadiness is a bridge everyone can cross. She meets the toddler's mother's eyes, gives a small nod, and the hiccups stop. She glances at the teenage boy. He looks at his shoes, then up, then back down as if he's just seen a grown-up do what grown-ups are supposed to. Ava returns to the cockpit. Reyes is there, checklist open, eyes proud without saying it. He doesn't have to ask if they're continuing. The answer is in how she sits. Outside, the tug driver raises a thumb. The wingtip blinks. The world, which had been temporarily narrowed to one aisle and one argument, widens again to include weather and vectors and a coastline like a line of thought. Elaine sits in the gate area beyond the glass, small against all that polished floor. Her phone is in her hand, but the screen is black. The words she'd planned have become unusable material. Something new is forming in their place, colder, cleaner, scarier. Everything she thought she knew was wrong. The door seals with a soft hydraulic hush. The aircraft becomes its own small country again. Pressurized, purposeful, boundaries clear. Ava settles into the left seat, harness drawn across her shoulders like a line she has earned and keeps. Reyes reads the next line of the checklist, his cadence steady. A metronome tapped onto aluminum. Before pushback, beacon on. Beacon on. Ava answers, flipping the guarded switch. A red pulse begins to blink beneath the belly, the heartbeat of intent. Doors and windows. Closed and locked. Maya's voice crackles on the interphone, professional and warm. Cabin secure, Captain. Ava depresses the toe brakes lightly, the way you test a memory. She looks through the flight deck glass at the tug crouched under the nose, the marshaller lifting glowwands in lazy arcs. Beyond, the runway lines are bright chalk dragged across slate. It is ordinary and holy. She keys the PA, the mic cool against her finger. Good morning again, folks. This is Captain Monroe from the flight deck. We had a brief delay while we coordinated with our ground team. I appreciate your patience and professionalism. Our flight time to Crescent City is 1 hour and 10 minutes. Smooth air expected for most of the ride. You're in good hands up here. Our cabin crew is ready to take great care of you back there. We'll be on our way in just a moment. No apologies. No explanations. Just the quiet transfer of confidence from one set of shoulders to 100. In 3A, the toddler sucks his thumb like a plug for storms. The mother exhales and lets her hand fall from the call button. In 6C, the teenage boy slumps, then sits taller, like he's seen a trick that isn't a trick at all. The businessman collects his performative sighs and folds them into his newspaper. Reyes gives a single nod that means everything is lined up. Ready for push. Ava tows the interphone to her mouth. Ground, Coastal 278 at B12, ready for push and start. Ground returns with an accent that smells like jet fuel and coffee. Coastal 278, push approved tail east. Expect taxi via Alpha. Push tail east, taxi Alpha, Coastal 278. The tug leans into the task. The cabin shifts in that gentle backward slide, the sensation of leaving without moving yet. The engines spool, first a whine, then a layered growl that settles into confidence. Ava watches the N1 rise, feels the vibration through the heels of her hands on the yoke, an animal waking that has agreed to be tamed. Engine 1 stable, engine 2 stable. The marshaller drops his arms. The tug disconnect flag waves like a tiny practical farewell. Ava releases the brakes and the aircraft rolls. Taxiway lights pop past like small patient planets. On the runway ahead, another jet lifts, trailing a ribbon of wake that will be gone by the time they arrive. Reyes handles the radio. Ava handles the airplane. The division is clear because respect is clear. It isn't loud. It doesn't need to be. This is what power looks like when it's not trying to be seen. At the hold short line, they pause. The sky is a pale sheet pulled tight, the kind of morning you write checklists to. Tower clears them with a sentence that feels like permission and responsibility braided together. Coastal 278. Winds calm. Runway 32 cleared for takeoff. Ava advances the thrust levers with the care of someone pushing open a door they built. The acceleration shoves gently, the cabin pressed into the moment. Numbers climb. The center line holds 80 knots. Checked, V1. Rotate. Ava lifts, not her chin, not her voice, just the nose. The runway drops away like an old argument. The wheels thump free. The aircraft becomes thought in metal and lift. Below, the terminal windows flash a mosaic of small lives. One of those panes holds Elaine's still form, tiny against a wall of glass nobody notices from up here. Reyes calls for gear. Ava's left hand brings the lever up. The wheels tuck like a decision finalized. The city slides under them, grid and glitter, then softens as coastline sews blue thread at the hem of land. The climb is clean. The air is the kind that rewards restraint. At 10,000 feet, Ava clicks off the landing lights and breathes into the kind of silence pilots know best, a silence that is not empty but exact. She rechecks the route, smooths the next waypoint into the FMS, and for a single private heartbeat, lets the weight of the last half hour settle. It lands on composure and goes no further. Maya calls from the aisle. Cabin's good. A few grateful faces. Thank you, Ava says. From us as well. She keys the PA once more. We've leveled off and the seatbelt sign will remain on while we get through a thin layer. After that, we'll let you move about. For now, relax. Enjoy the view if you're on the left. Coastline will be with us for a bit. In 6C, the teenage boy leans toward the window, forehead nearly touching the scratched plastic. He can't see the cockpit, but he can feel it, the steady, invisible hand that kept the room from becoming something else. Back on the ground, in the silent acreage of carpet by gate B12, Elaine sits with a rebooking printout like a verdict she wrote for herself. The glass throws back the reflection of a jet lifting, then leaves only the sky it pierced, a witness without a jury. Ava rests her palm on the throttles, a touch like gratitude. She looks at the horizon, at the thin, bright line where light negotiates with air, and guides the aircraft along it with the kind of authority that never raises its voice. Power has shifted, not from one person to another. From noise to skill, from fear to procedure, from threat to flight. And the cabin, which earlier held its breath, now breathes as one. Elaine sits at gate B12 as if the chair were a witness stand and the carpet a cool blue ocean closing over her shoes. The boarding door has latched. The tug has nudged the silver fuselage. The airplane tilts and glides from the window's frame like a thought leaving. The wingtip blinks twice, an eyelid of light, and then the jet is only a distant geometry moving toward sky. The gate area returns to its natural climate. Announcements like weather reports, the dry tick of flight boards revising destinies, wheels humming past like bees. But Elaine hears it all through cotton. The rebooking slip in her palm is the weight of a small, bland future. New departure, 12:05. It's the color of concession. Her phone vibrates with a message from a husband whose patience wears itself like a wristwatch. All good? 2 words, no punctuation. She types, deletes, types again. The honest sentence is too heavy. The false sentence is too light. She chooses a neutral shape, delayed on a later flight. She adds a period that tries to hold the wall up alone. Across the glass, the runway shimmers. A crosswind ruffles the grass beyond the perimeter fence, bending it in one direction, then letting it stand the way tall things stand after weather. A child presses his face to the window. His breath fogs a little oval cloud that erases the world and then clears it anew. The act looks like grace, and that makes something inside her sting. She folds the rebooking slip until its edges meet, then refolds the square into a smaller square, then again, as if perfection of geometry could shrink the fact. The paper's fibers resist, then surrender, then hold the crease like memory. When the airplane rotates in the distance and begins to climb, the cabin of gate B12 inhales in the way airports do when a shared wish takes off. Elaine watches the jet lift into clean morning, wheels tucked, nose up, the confident glide of choice. For the first time, she doesn't feel left behind. She feels put aside. There is a difference, and it lands with a private thud. The loudspeaker coughs. Attention passengers for Flight 278 to Crescent City, departed. The word sounds like a door closing from the other side of the hall. Elaine stands and walks. Not far. The water fountain, the restroom, the corridor lined with photographs of local coastline misted by dawn. The images are all horizon, a line where gray sea and pale sky negotiate their treaty. She used to like pictures like this. Now they feel like diagrams labeling a place she doesn't know how to reach. In the restroom, the hum is intimate, layered with the hushed chorus of motion sensor faucets. She meets herself in the mirror. Fluorescent light draws its unforgiving squares across her face, flattening the angles, showing the seam where performance meets fatigue. Her lipstick has thinned. She reapplies without looking away from her own pupils. What she sees there is not a villain. That would be easier. She sees a woman whose ideas of safety were handed to her like folded linens, clean, white and quietly stained by the hands that passed them down. She sees how she has maintained those linens, how she has pressed them, how she has believed pressing itself was goodness. She sees the pilot's stripes reflected behind her, not in reality but as an afterimage on the glass, like lightning that keeps your eyes company a few beats too long. Water starts itself at the sink when she puts her hands beneath the sensor. The stream is thin, apologetic. She cups it anyway, watches it puddle and then slide through her fingers. It is a small mercy to be taught again, that you cannot hold what will not be held. She hears somewhere faint. A child's delighted, it's winking, likely about another airplane's wingtip blinking in some other pane of glass. The sound reaches her like a messenger from a species she forgot to join, the kind that wonders first and judges later, or never. Her phone screen blooms again. A news notification. Generic. About airport policies and compliance incidents on the rise. The phrase she used to fling like a shield now looks like a mirror tilted toward her. She lowers the phone, feels heat in her cheeks, cool in her palms where the water has dried to a thin chapel of salt. Elaine waits for anger to arrive. That old soldier. It doesn't. Embarrassment comes instead, without armor, wearing civilian clothes. Behind it, something quieter. Fear, but not of the captain, not of the airplane or sky. Fear of her own voice when it isn't amplified by certainty. Fear of the distance between what she thinks she is and what she just performed for 100 strangers. She returns to the window. The sky has accepted Flight 278 completely. No contrail yet, just the idea of a path the air knows even after the aircraft has left. The wingtip blink she can no longer see still pulses in her imagination. A metronome marking two truths. That she cannot rewind 30 minutes. And that the person who told her feeling is yours did not say it to win, but to draw a line she could choose to cross later. A wheelchair glides past, the reverse beep patient and soft. A service dog dozes, chest rising like tied against a handler's shoe. The carpet's blue holds its color. The glass keeps being glass, transparent, reflective, impartial. In it, Elaine watches her own outline beside the faint ghost of the departing jet's reflection, as if the plane left an echo she can stand next to, but never touch. No one is laughing at her. No one is pointing. The punishment here is not public. It's structural. The airport moves on around her, and in that movement is a verdict. The world is larger than her narrative, and it doesn't need her permission to correct itself. She breathes. The breath is deeper than habit. For a second she imagines the cockpit, two voices saying checked, a hand on the throttle, a horizon that obeys because someone earned the right to ask. The image is steadying and sharp. It leaves just enough room for a sentence she's never tried. Maybe I was wrong. A new boarding call rises at a neighboring gate. A different wingtip blinks. Somewhere far above the shoreline photos, a real ocean slides under a real fuselage, and the light along its surface is a word she doesn't know yet, but hopes to learn. By early afternoon, the airport's fluorescent daylight has tilted toward the color of paperwork. Elaine sits at a small conference table beyond the glass doors of customer relations, a room built to look neutral, and therefore feels like judgment. The walls display framed value statements in serif fonts. A carafe of water sweats onto a coaster that says we're listening. Everything is hushed except the clock, which has decided to be present. Two people enter, Brenda, now in a blazer with company insignia, and a man in navy with an unobtrusive badge clipped inside his jacket. He moves with the tempo of an internal investigator. Not slow, not fast, impossibly even. Ms. Whitford, Brenda says, taking the seat opposite. Thank you for waiting. Elaine straightens. I've missed my connection. My husband has rearranged his day. I intend to file a complaint against your crew for harassment and denial of service. Understood, the man replies, opening a leather folder. My name is Daniel Price, Safety and Compliance. He pronounces compliance like an address rather than a weapon. We're going to record a formal statement. We'll also present our preliminary findings. Good, Elaine says. Price clicks a pen. The sound is small and definitive. First, a short summary for the record. At approximately 10:04, you were observed in the premium lounge engaging with a uniformed employee. Security was called. Identification was verified. No violation found. At 10:37 during boarding for Flight 278, you photographed the flight deck contrary to posted security directives. At 10:42, you stood during an FAA-required pre-departure phase and refused crew instructions to be seated. At 10:44, while retrieving your bag, you obstructed the aisle, creating a hazard. He glances up. Is this accurate? Elaine opens her hands, palms upward. I felt unsafe. The captain's behavior in the lounge was, he holds up a single finger, not to silence, but to separate facts. We will include your perception in the file. For now, we need yes or no. Yes, she says finally, the word touching the table like a coin. Brenda slides a paper across. A printed copy of the airline's contract of carriage, sections highlighted. Per section 8.2, she says, interference with crew duties constitutes grounds for refusal of transport. The captain exercised that authority. I'll be reimbursed then, Elaine says, reaching for friction that might yield a spark. You will be rebooked, Brenda replies, even. Compensation is discretionary, not owed. Price folds his hands. We're going to outline 3 outcomes today, Ms. Whitford. Please listen fully before you respond. Elaine's jaw sets. First, he continues, there is the immediate operational outcome. You were removed from Flight 278 and reaccommodated on the 1205. That flight will remain unless you choose otherwise. He flips to the next page. Second, there is the administrative action. Given witness statements and documented refusal to comply, we are issuing a formal passenger conduct notice. This is not a ban. It is a record that will remain on file for 24 months. Any future incident will escalate consequences. Elaine's voice is smooth glass. You issue notices to people who ask to feel safe. Price does not nod. He does not argue. We issue notices to passengers whose actions increase risk. Brenda lays another sheet on the table, a printed still from a camera inside the jetway, Elaine half standing with the bag strap taut. The image is sterile and merciless. This, Brenda says, is why the notice applies. Elaine studies the grain of her own posture and feels the room decide. What's the third outcome? She asks. Price turns another page. Third is remedial. It's unusual, but we exercise it when we believe learning prevents recurrence. Because your initial report involved the identity of a crew member in a way that suggests bias. You are required to complete our respect and travel module before you can travel again on our airline. It's 90 minutes online, certification required within 30 days. Elaine laughs once, a sound with no bottom. You're sending me to training. Brenda's tone stays level. We're offering you the fastest way out of this room and back onto any of our aircraft with no further restriction. And if I refuse? Then, Price says, we institute a 12-month suspension of travel privileges with our airline and notify our codeshare partners of the conduct notice. Additionally, airport police may pursue a civil citation for interference. That is separate from us. The sentences arrive like carefully stacked boxes. None are thrown. All are heavy. Elaine's mouth tastes like copper. You said compensation is discretionary. Brenda meets that head-on. Given the costs our crew and ground staff incurred managing the delay and the impact on other passengers, there will be no compensation today, Price adds. However, if you complete the module within 7 days and submit acknowledgement, we will remove the notation from your profile at 18 months instead of 24. It is generous without being soft. It is merciless without raising its voice. Brenda's phone buzzes. She silences it. One more item. Your allegation of harassment in the lounge was investigated. Security reviewed video. The employee you confronted was seated, reading a company manual. You approached, requested credentials, and placed a call before security arrived. The employee complied. The report notes no harassment by staff. The room's air becomes measurable. Elaine hears her own breath.
She recognizes, down to the bones of the word, that there will be no secret alternate hearing where the narrative reinflates itself. Price slides a final page across, a 1-paragraph form with 2 boxes.
I accept the remedial option. I decline and acknowledge suspension. Check 1, he says, and sign. Elaine looks at the boxes the way a person looks at runway lines from the wrong side of the fence. For a moment, pride presses against the glass. Then it fogs, clears, and leaves transparency behind. She checks the first box. The pen scratches a signature that looks like hers because it is. Brenda stands, offering a folder with the training link and her card. We appreciate your cooperation. Price closes his leather file. A gate agent will escort you to your new flight. We expect boarding in 15 minutes, Elaine nods once. Not defeat. A receipt. As she reaches the door, Brenda adds, for what it's worth, Captain Monroe filed no complaint. She requested only that we handle it properly. The handle is cool under Elaine's palm. The sentence lands like a final verdict delivered in a kindness she didn't earn. She steps back into the airport's weather. Announcements. Footsteps, the calm hum of due process, and the door sighs shut behind her with the irrevocability of a sealed cabin. The escort leaves Elaine at gate C7 with a paper boarding pass that feels heavier than plastic and less useful than a door key. The area is quieter here, a satellite to the main concourse. Fewer shops, fewer voices, more room for your own. She sits by the window because punishment wears the face of choice. You can face the glass or turn away from it and look at nothing. She picks the glass. Outside, ground crew in reflective vests move with determined choreography. Headsets gleam, cones sit like small orange verdicts. The airplane assigned to her second chance squats at the end of the jet bridge, nose forward, signage generic. The kind of machine that asks nothing of your beliefs except that you fasten your belt. She tries the thought on. Belts, buckles, rules as a form of mercy. It holds longer than expected. She opens the folder from Brenda, Respect and Travel. The cover page speaks in a tone she recognizes from employee handbook she's never had to read. She wants to reject it with a flick, send it skating under a seat. Instead, she reads the first line. Bias is the story you tell yourself quickly. Respect is the one you agree to learn slowly. The sentence makes something in her ribs shift like luggage that wasn't secured before pushback. Her phone vibrates. Husband again. Update? She types rebooked. Will land later. She stares at the cursor. Then, without giving herself a speech about it, she adds, got into it with a pilot this morning. I was wrong. She waits for the sky to fall inside the phone. It doesn't. A bubble returns. Love you. Land safe, 2 sentences. The first is a net. The second is a runway. The loudspeaker announces pre-boarding. The words used to sound like privilege to her. Today they simply sound like procedure. An elderly woman with a cane rises carefully. A man with a sleeping baby shifts the sling. No one is performing anything for anyone else. The world continues to function without her permission. The realization is cold and she surprises herself. Liberating. She flinches at a sudden whine that crescendos, then recognizes it as only an engine spool from a nearby gate. Reflex lives under the skin longer than belief. She lets the fear wash, then thin out. The airplane is not a verdict. It is a vehicle. The people who fly it are not symbols. They are professionals. Captain Monroe's face returns to her, the steadiness of it, the way authority made the air around her less, not more crowded. Elaine hears again, safety is what I do. Feeling is yours. She doesn't argue with the memory this time. She sets it beside her like a glass of water. A child points beyond the glass. Look, he says, a different child than before, but singing the same species. It's winking. The mother smiles. The wingtip light blinks. The signal is not for Elaine. It's for other pilots, other vehicles. A language of coordination she's only now learning to admire. She imagines Ava 20,000 feet up by now. Left hand steady on the yoke, right hand trimming. Reyes reading altitudes. Maya securing carts. Passengers drowsing in the soft hum of trust. She imagines the coastline sliding by like ribbon. That flight is not hers anymore, but the idea of it no longer stings. It steadies, boarding group numbers climb. People stand, sit, stand again, the typical airport prayer. When her group is called, Elaine remains seated for a beat. She practices a sentence under her breath that she has never said to anyone in a uniform. Thank you for your work. The words sound simple enough to survive said aloud. A figure in a crisp airport polo takes the podium to handle a last-minute seat reassignment. Any volunteers to move to an exit row? He asks, hands rise. Willingness manifest. The exchange feels like the smallest, purest democracy. She watches it like weather she used to ignore. Her mind flicks back to the lounge. Her own voice, that phone angled like a gavel, the certainty she wore like a coat 2 sizes too small. The memory is hot and then strangely cool. She understands that shame is not a lifetime. It is a door. You can live in front of it, or you can open it and find a hallway with light. Group 4, the gate agent calls. Elaine stands. Her knees feel new. When she reaches the scanner, the agent smiles with the weary warmth of someone who has done this 10,000 times. Elaine offers her pass and before the green light chirps, says softly, "Thank you, for your work." The agent looks up with a brief, clear surprise. Then she nods. "You're welcome." On the jet bridge, the familiar, cool draft meets her. The walls hum. The aircraft door is a rounded rectangle of white with a line of rivets like braille. She touches nothing and touches everything. The flight attendant at the threshold greets her. "Welcome aboard." Elaine meets her eyes. "Thank you," she says, meaning it in all directions. To the attendant, to the airplane, to a pilot hundreds of miles away who chose not to press another kind of button. She finds her seat. The window waits. She buckles in, the click authoritative and kind. As boarding completes, the captain on this flight makes a short announcement. Voice patient, practiced. No drama, just a route and a time. When the door closes, it is the same sound from earlier. But inside her it lands differently. Not exclusion, containment, not punishment, protection. Pushback begins. The plane trembles with readiness. As they line up for takeoff, a departing jet climbs into view on a crossing runway. Sleek, purposeful, a cocktail of physics and discipline. For one suspended second, it aligns perfectly with the rectangle of her window, a silhouette cut from bright sky. She holds her breath and lets the image brand itself somewhere she can't wash. Then it rises, smooth and unhurried, into the exact silence she needs. What if the loudest sound in an airport isn't the engines but the moment a mind changes? You watched a line form this morning, a visible one at the gate and an invisible one inside a woman who believed she knew what safety looked like. You watched it bend. You watched it break. You watched it redraw itself in a shape she hadn't practiced. That is the quiet thunder of justice, not spectacle, but the rearrangement of certainty. Think about how it began. A lounge chair, a phone angled like a badge, a presumption dressed up as a procedure, and then a name on the PA, A. Monroe, spoken in the same neutral tone that announces weather and boarding groups. How many lives turn on voices that don't care who is listening? How many stories are rewritten because a sentence with no attitude walks into a room and does its job? If you felt your chest lift when the captain stepped into the aisle, that was not about triumph. It was about alignment. Order reasserted itself without shouting. Procedure wore a human face. 2 officers stood still and the air did the work. The airplane did not leave as an escape. It left as a lesson. It climbed on the thrust of competence while fear waited at the window and watched how small it could be. You saw 2 worlds, and how thin the wall between them really is. The first world is made of soft privileges. Wave me through. I prefer. We could vote. The second is made of hard responsibilities, checklists, sign-offs, regulations that do not flex for moods. The miracle is that the second world protects the first even when insulted by it. A captain who could have humiliated chose instead to instruct. A supervisor who could have scolded chose to document. A system that could have punished chose first to teach. Ask yourself, where do you stand when your feelings are loud and the facts are quiet? When you say I don't feel safe, do you mean danger or do you mean difference? The distinction is not academic. It is the distance between calling security and calling yourself to account. Safety is not a mirror you hold up to your fears. Safety is a structure built in long hours, bias checks, and recorded decisions that holds even when you are upset. There was irony here, yes. The cinematic kind. The woman who questioned a stranger's right to sit discovered that strangers' right to fly. But the truer irony ran deeper. Control isn't what you seize. It's what you steward. Ava's control never needed a volume knob. It needed clarity and courage, 2 forces that do not trend on social feeds but have landed more flights than any slogan ever could. And what about Elaine? You could leave her at the gate, small against the glass, living forever as a caution. But that's not real life, and you know it. She signed the form. She took the later flight. She typed the text that admitted fault with no theatrics because the person at the other end loved the landing more than the posture. Guilt did not end her. Consequence did not erase her. It placed her. And there, in that placement, a door opened. She started to understand that bias is a story told fast, and respect is the revision told slowly. This is where you enter, audience. In the next lounge you visit, in the next line you lead, in the next complaint you consider filing, who will you be? The one who needs a stage or the one who makes the room safe? If you believe justice was served today, ask yourself how you will serve it when there's no captain to do the speaking. When you are the first voice, will you turn your feeling into a fact before you use it on someone else? Look again at the symbols that threaded this story. The wingtips blink, a metronome of patience. The cockpit door closed not to exclude, but to keep pressure where it belongs. The checklist, dry words that keep fire from becoming news. The PA tone, clean, impartial, calling people not by their assumptions, but by their destinations. Symbols are only as good as the people who inhabit them. Today, the right person wore the stripes, and the stripes meant something you could sleep under and listen. Listen to the sound that isn't there. No gloating, no victory lap. Just the continuous hush of air over aluminum, and a pilot's hand resting on the throttles as if thanking the machine for trusting her back. Quiet power is the most convincing kind, because it doesn't need your permission to exist. It simply flies. If stories like this steadied you, if they made you breathe deeper or think twice before you let fear pick up the phone, stay with us. We tell them for a reason, to tune your inner instruments, to calibrate your approach when weather moves in. For more stories of cinematic justice and earned grace, consider following along. It helps these lessons reach the next crowded gate. And if you know someone who needs this reminder, someone who could use a wingtip's blink in their timeline, share it forward. Because the smallest course corrections taken early keep us all on the center line. Today's ending was simple. A safe departure, a hard truth, a softer landing inside someone who rarely made them. Justice didn't raise its voice. It cleared the runway.